This is a demonstration to protest about the brutality in Winson Green prison. It was sparked off by the beating of Paul Taylor, who was a Strangeways prison rioter, on the 19th of March. He was very, very badly assaulted in Winson Green, so much so that he was taken to hospital and returned in a wheelchair, and was in hospital for 3 or 4 weeks. Following that beating, Paul Taylor's partner, Jane, placed an advert in Inside Time, a newspaper that goes into jails, asking for information from other prisoners about brutality in Winson Green, and we received a shoal of replies, all naming the same landing, D3, and all naming the same prison officer who appears to have orchestrated the beatings. Some of the details in these letters were quite horrific, and we're convinced that a regime of systematic brutality operates on D3 landing in this prison. What we hope to achieve is just to let them know that we're here, basically, and that we're watching what's going on, we're aware of what's going on, hoping to let the public be aware, and hoping that the Home Office will do something about it. Judging by their past history, we're not too hopeful, but we're here doing our best. Winson Green is notorious for brutality, going back to Barry Prosser, the Birmingham Six. A man called John Bowden received a terrible beating in here, so much so that he received £3,000 damages off the Home Office in 1992. Now, this particular landing of this prison has got a terrible reputation, and it's still going on as far as we're concerned.
Paul Taylor, one of the leading people in the Strangeways prison protest 5 years ago, was the most recent victim of a regime of brutality here, where high-profile prisoners such as him are singled out for beatings. There have already been court cases taken in the past against officers from this jail. In 1992, a prisoner was awarded £3,000 compensation for fractured ribs and other injuries sustained in the jail behind us. So even the courts have recognised that brutality does go on in Winson Green, and supporters and friends and families of prisoners who are detained here in other jails have had enough, and we're here to highlight that abuse and to demand an end to it.
I understand that, okay. The only thing I'd ask is that you don't go onto the steps, that's prison property.
Yeah, of course, yeah. No problem.
I think there's too much brutality going on in the, in the prisons. I think Paul Taylor and the, the other prisoners that took a protest on Strangeways, have been responsible for bringing about, better conditions in the nicks. People have been beginning to be treated more humanely. There's just the isolated few prisons, which maintain a brutality regime. Paul Taylor is being made a scapegoat, for the success that the Strangeways riots has had.
I'm an ex-prisoner, now a writer, and I've organised this demonstration. It's mainly because of Paul Taylor, who was one of the ringleaders of the Strangeways prison riot. Paul was moved here on the 17th of March, and on the 19th of March he suffered a severe beating at the hands of about 10 prison officers. His injuries were so bad that he had to go to an outside hospital where he remained for a week, and then he was in a prison hospital in a wheelchair for about 3 weeks afterwards. Following that incident, that attack, his partner placed an advert in a magazine, Inside Time, which goes into prisoners, asking if any other prisoners had details of brutality in Winson Green. We received a shoal of replies, some 48, of which some 18 detailed severe beatings in Winson Green on the same landing that Paul was beaten, which is D3, the segregation landing. And from these reports, we're pretty certain that a systematic regime of brutality and beatings has been and is still going on that landing in that prison.
Can you tell me what's happened to Paul Taylor?
He was moved here from Blakenhurst on the 17th of March, and on the 19th of March he was attacked. There was 10 officers in his cell, 3 of them are named, and there was about another 10, 15 outside the cell on D3 landing. He took a beating which was very serious. They held his head underwater, They battered him. He had to be taken to Dudley Road Hospital, suffering from very serious head injuries and back injuries. And he's still recovering now. He's getting better, but he's still in a lot of pain. He, as a result of that, we got in touch with other prisoners, and we found out that this is happening all the time here. All the prisoners, without prior knowledge of each other, without prior knowledge that anybody else has written, are naming the same officer, one officer of Winson Green. They're all naming him, and some of these assaults are horrendous, you know, so it's got to stop.
Can you tell me the name of that officer?
David Espy.
Right, just tell me, if you could name him and tell me a little bit about what he's been doing.
He's very high up in the POA, which I think is appalling. He has a pack of officers that follow him. He's the orchestrator of it. He doesn't just beat them. Some of these assaults are sexual and very vicious, very, very vicious indeed.
Just ask them in there if the governor, a letter was sent to the governor for him to come out and speak to a deposition, and he's refused. You know what I mean? I've asked the screws there if their union, you know, can send in somebody else to speak to us. You know what I mean? And he said no. So you know, they've got something to hide. You know what I mean? They won't defend themselves.
To Paul Taylor was not an isolated incident. There exists within Winson Green a unit, the D3 segregation unit, and on this unit it is commonplace for a group of prison officers to beat and batter prisoners who for some reason they take a dislike to. Anybody they see as in any way subversive or simply counter to their authority gets a treatment in there which has certainly landed Paul Taylor in hospital and other prisoners before him in hospital. We want this to be the last time it happens. We've asked the governor of the prison to come out and meet us, which he's refused to do. And we're asking the prison to give us and to give the families of Winson Green prisoners assurances that this kind of brutality towards the people that is supposed to be guarding never happens again. End the brutality, end the victimisation.
Stop the guilty screw.
End the brutality, end the victimisation.
Stop the guilty screw.
We're not saying that the violence is widespread in this prison. We're saying that it is segregated to one unit, and that's D3 unit. The senior officer in charge of that unit is named Senior Officer Espy. Stop the guilty screw! Stop the brutality in Winson Green! Stop the guilty screw! And we've been demanding a meeting with the governor or with the senior officer at the centre of all the allegations, David Espy, 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 David Espy.